Here we go. We're now talking to Karina Nistel of the Free Radicals. Karina, could you tell me a bit about White Power Outage?
Absolutely, yes. So White Power Outage, we are basically a Houston collective, and we are talking about global issues. Normally we're at protests, we're at breakdance concerts, funerals, but we're always finding new ways to promote injustices in the world and connect our musical communities from all over the world. There's 5 different languages on the album. So we work with people from the Gaza Strip, his name is Bish, Jitsbinger and Lindy from South Africa, Verso Pesado from Venezuela, Bright is from Australia, and these are friends of friends from Houston, so we're all just sort of a Houston collective.
I'm curious about the political situation in Houston. How would you describe it?
Well, as far as locally or statewide?
I would say it seems that like a lot of cities, like Austin, of course, are very liberal.
Yeah.
In contrast to the reputation the state itself has.
Right. Houston, I would consider a little more purple. Our city officials are decent. I think they try their best. The protests, they're happening, and Free Radicals are present. They are the voice for the people. They are the brass band, and they have a presence for anyone who cannot speak for themselves and express themselves and be there to represent themselves. Our Palestine brothers and sisters from Yemen, we're there representing them. We've connected with so many different kinds of musicians from all walks of life, and so collectively everything's globalizing, so we want to globalize ourselves.
What's the cultural environment? Are there a lot of immigrants from not just Latin American countries, but other countries as well?
Absolutely. Houston's a whirlpool of everything, and you can tell in our foods, because Houston is such a diverse international city, when it comes to food and culture in that sense. But there's absolutely just all kinds of immigrants from different parts of the world, and there, like I said, there's a presence. So anytime that something major is happening, like right now with everything that's happening in the Ukraine, there are people present to protest for them. There's even right now, right out here, there's people trying to get us to donate and pull our efforts together. But one of our main focuses in Houston has been the baby jails. That's one of the tracks that I'm on, Bipartisan Baby Jail.
I saw the video for that one.
Yeah, we were outside of the actual locations, and there was one location where they pretty much threatened us to leave. And we were saying, well, you don't have anything to hide. We're just doing our craft. What's the problem? And they said, you need to go. This is a federal building. We will have you arrested. So we were, we were basically ran off. And the next location, which is on Emancipation Avenue, of all places, we were able to just film across the street. But yeah, there's the baby jails right in Houston. They're not, Southwest Keys is the official name, but it's terrible. And that is one thing that our city officials, well, I'd say Sylvester Turner was not fond of the baby jails.
And Sylvester Turner,
he's our mayor. Yeah. But there's also the Houston massacre of black soldiers in 1917 that Deology talks about. He's been considered one of Houston's best underground rappers since the 90s. So he also talks about the Sugarland 95. That was the mass graves of black people buried under modern cities. So these are issues that nobody's really talking about anymore, and that's what Free Radicals likes to touch on.
It seems that now with things like the Tulsa massacre, or in Canada, Indigenous children at those boarding schools, a lot of those are finally coming up to the surface.
Right. There's so many injustices to talk about. We don't even have enough time, in our day to cover everything, but we want to keep bringing awareness to what's happening, and just let people know, like, this is the history and this is what's happened since, and nothing's been done, or very little has been done, or some progress has been made, and we're here to keep reminding you about it.
How long have you been involved with Free Radicals?
I've been involved for 3 years, but I have circled the Houston music scene with them for 25 years. So they've always stood for very big movements, and they've always been at the protests, and they've always, just been for the people. Just spoken out on any time there's been wars, or any time there's been anything worth discussing, any world news, and our political leaders, we were suckered into voting for Biden and Kamala, and here we are dealing with the baby jail issue that Trump, that was part of his presidency. So it's sort of a continuation. We thought, okay, maybe these kids will be liberated, but it hasn't happened yet. So we're waiting.
One thing, are there any particular jazz artists that came before that you really look up to? Because certainly there have been jazz performers who have included activism and social commentary.
Funny you should mention Harry Shepard. He was part of the early Free Radicals. He recently passed away, older gentleman. He was always, an activist, and that's sort of the appeal between what Free Rads and what Harry did. So he was just a perfect fit for what the Free Rads were doing. But world-class musician, someone very recognized, and we definitely miss him in our Houston community.
And absolutely. And I think, with the image, I think when people talk about jazz, they overlook people like Nina Simone.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was just quoting her the other day, and the only reason I mentioned Harry before Nina is because he's part of our collective. But Nina Simone had a very powerful quote that I have always loved, and she said, how could you be an artist and not express the issues, the current world issues, or the issues of the world? It's not word for word, but that is one of her quotes that really resonated with me, that said, we are artists to be able to express ourselves. And I'm half Cuban. I have family in Cuba. That's we wrote the ritmo en Gitmo for Guantanamo Bay. My cousins are terrified. They're like, please don't release that song. We don't know what's going to happen. And I'm like, well, it's more about the blockade, and that's why my dad left the island. He escaped so that I could have the freedom to say whatever I wanted to say. And I intend to actually go visit them and really dig into the political climate a little more, because I want to understand, where they're coming from, and I want to see where my father's roots were. But we are definitely discussing the issues, the torture issues at Guantanamo Bay, that people haven't heard about since 2001, but the embargo the torture facility. You know, there's so many issues there. But you know, like I said, there's so many songs, and all of the songs have so much relevance to what's happening now and what's happened before. Killer Bee Honey, that's the song called The Next Generation. It's a mother and daughter team, and they worked with Free Rads 22 years ago. So they are discussing the protests, the destruction of the protests, and just, you know, undermining the ecocide of what's going on. But they've, you know, Sharia Rattler and Miriam Rattler, they've been recording with Free Rads for 22 years now. So that's a great song, and one of my highlights from the new album. And we've got the volume 2. You said you saw the video. So we're really excited about what's coming up. Manifestation en el Centro Hoy. That's kind of like, you know, all the manifestations, all the protests that are happening in the city. Free Rads is always there. They're always there with their instruments. They're always there with the drums, with the brass band, and people love it. And it just adds a layer to the protests that makes it peaceful. You know, a peaceful layer, because there's music involved, and music has the power to unify people.
Given the political environment in Texas, you know, how do you avoid getting discouraged? How do you manage to keep going?
Well, they say we have to go vote, so it's good to get out and at least let your voice be heard on the ballot. But it's also good to stand for these issues. If there's something that you feel very strongly about, I think it's very important to protest, and, you know, peacefully protest, obviously. I think it's very important to donate to these causes. And, you know, it's never going to be perfect, but it's just something that we all have to unify to try to do. You're aware of the trans community issues that are happening. So we have friends that are dealing with, you know, the fear of their families being separated, and so they're looking into other states to move into. So that's something that we plan to powwow over and hopefully put a benefit together for. There's so many issues here. Women's reproductive systems, you know, I mean, how could you not be offended, you know? I just want to crawl out of my skin at some points.
What do you think of someone like Beto O'Rourke, who's trying to make, in his own way, make political change in this state?
I like Beto. I have some reservations about, you know, he's a politician, so, you know, they all have big promises. But I would like to see him deliver some. I like the way he handled the shootings in El Paso. I think he did a very good job coming in and supporting the community. He's hip, he's cool. But again, I'd like to see him in action. I'd like to see him really roll up his sleeves and get a little dirtier.
Also, what advice would you give to other musicians who want to blend music and activism, how to keep that momentum going?
Well, I think you should connect with the Free Radicals. You know, we're always looking for people to collaborate with. It's likely that we could also contribute to some, you know, the cause in some way, shape, or form. Cross promotion is, you know, also very important between artists when they have an activism, you know, they want to be involved in activism and protesting, and just don't give up. You know, it's fighting the good fight is never easy. but it's absolutely necessary.